Chris, will the Clippers be back here Sunday playing the Game 7?
What?
Your feeling about, your level of confidence that you'll be back here again.
What you think? I'm on the team. What you want me to say? Nah, it's over. I mean, that's what you want to hear? Yes. That's. Come on, man. You've been doing this long enough. Seriously, right?
If you can expand upon that.
No, I don't know. Everybody in here laughing for a reason.
After a disappointing run in the 2017 playoffs with the Los Angeles Clippers, Chris Paul got asked a frustrating question, and it was clear his time in Los Angeles was going to end. So where would he go next? On June 28, 2017, Chris Paul got traded to the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets had James Harden running the system. James Harden and Chris Paul would be the two main ball handlers as they spam pick and rolls the most. But this fit was questionable at first. Mike D'Antoni would be the Rockets head coach going into the season. In a league where everyone was copying the Warriors style of basketball, Mike D'Antoni decided to run an offense in a different way. He wanted PJ Tucker and Aaron Gordon shooting threes, Chris Paul and James Harden running ISOs, and Clint Capella being a good rim protector at the rim and finisher. James Harden was having a legit MVP campaign, and the Rockets started in the first 29 games 25-4, having the best record in the league at the time, but tragedy would strike. The Rockets would end up losing 5 in a row, with Chris Paul sitting out for most of those games. Fans were questionable about this, and then the Rockets won 2 more, but then lost 2 more again. James Harden was tricky to guard because you didn't know if he was going to step back for free or finish. His ISO game was super good, and he was really good at getting past defenders for the layup. Usually, as you can see here, he takes a few dribbles, waits for his defender to back up, and he'll usually just step it back, or he'll drive for the lane. He's really good at reading his defender's movements as he sees his defender goes a little to the left, so he just explodes right. James Harden got really good at doing these things, and it helped the Rockets and Mike D'Antoni with the ISO system. This ISO system seemed to work a lot as James Harden kept getting to the basket over and over again. Even if his defender went to the same way as he did, he would always find a way to finish. Or he could just simply step it back for free, because James Harden was one of the best in the league at doing that, and that was his shot. Chris Paul was no different. Chris Paul was really good at tricking the taller defenders into getting deep inside the paint and simply stepping it back for his mid-range jumper. Chris Paul has one of the deadliest mid-range jumpers in the league. As you can see here, he waits for his defender to go to the side and just crosses back for the easy mid-range jumper that he's going to hit 9 out of 10 times. Here, he takes a few dribbles, waits for his defender, crosses back again, and does the same exact thing. This is what really helped the Rockets win a bunch of games, Chris Paul and James Harden's isolation. As you can see on this one, he steps it back and he just fires over the big man and sticks it. James Harden and Chris Paul were lethal ISO scorers, and they could get you a bucket whenever you needed it, and the Rockets won many games from this strategy. Aaron Gordon was also really variable for the Rockets. He was really good at making three-pointers. He's the main guy that Chris Paul and James Harden or anyone else on the team could just drive and kick to. As you can see, he's also a really good finisher, and he could get to the free throw line. On this play, he gets past Tatum and draws the foul to go to the line, and he sinks the shot. Eric Gordon was one of the best players for the Rockets. His defense wasn't half bad either, as he was a really good defensive player, and it really helped the Rockets win a lot of games that season. Clint Capella was the defensive anchor to this squad. He was also a great pick-and-roll player, and James Harden and Chris Paul could just feed him all the time. He averaged 16.6 points and 12.7 rebounds in that season. As you can see, he's really good at just running the pick-and-roll and setting good screens, and James Harden and Chris Paul can keep looking for him. At times, he could just randomly go for 20 or sometimes up to 25 or 30 points in a game, which helped the Rockets a lot. Whenever the Rockets needed some good points inside, it was Clint Capella. He was also really good on defense. As you can see here, he gets this block. This proves that Clint Capella was one of the best players also for the Rockets and helped the squad. And if James Harden and Chris Paul messed up the isolation, Clint Capella could just grab the rebound and simply put it back in. As you can see, he's doing all these great plays against Miles Turner, a really good defensive center. He's also good at catching lobs. As you see here, he catches a lob by PJ Tucker to start the game, which gets the Houston crowd going. And here he catches another lob from James Harden. Clint Capella was just all out such a great player for the Rockets that year. The Houston Rockets on January 20th, 2018 had a game against the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors were the best team at this time and have won 2 of the last 3 NBA championships. They had a record of 37-9, while the Rockets only had a record of 31-12. Going into the game, this game seemed like it was going to be close. James Harden and Chris Paul put on a show. Chris Paul led the way with 33 points. And as you see, James Harden was knocking down three-pointers and doing his usual stuff. Everyone was getting involved in this game. James Harden, takes a couple jab steps and steps it back on Draymond Green to drill the three-pointer. While the Warriors were playing really good basketball, as you can see here, Draymond Green was going to find Kevin Durant for a wide-open three. The Houston Rockets weren't playing as bad defense. On this play right here, the Warriors just forget about in transition and Clint Capella can just euro step for the easy basket. The Rockets were really good at attacking the Warriors inside the paint, and it was interesting seeing that there was actually a team that could threat them. In transition, the Warriors were just disappearing and the Rockets were getting easy baskets. At around midway through the first quarter, it was 7-16. The Warriors were still doing what they usually do and were at full strength this game, and so were the Rockets. The Rockets kept fighting, and James Harden and Chris Paul were doing what they do, and James Harden in isolation was attacking Klay Thompson, who was a really good perimeter defender. And the Rockets would walk away with the win. 108-116 was the final score in the game. The Houston Rockets were just kept attacking Golden State, and Golden State struggled. This really proved that the Rockets were a threat in the West, and that maybe in the playoffs they could come out and do something against this dynasty. Although this would be the last game they played in the season, the Rockets did beat them earlier in the season in their first game, and they played again at the start of January, but Kevin Durant and James Harden didn't play in that game. The style of basketball by Mike D'Antoni seemed to work because the Rockets went on a 16-game winning streak. At this point, it was questionable if the Rockets were the best team in the NBA because of how they've been playing and just simply dominating teams. And James Harden was playing some of the best isolation basketball we have ever seen. He was so good at just getting past his defenders for tricking them and stepping back into an easy three-point shot for him. The Rockets kept up their amazing style of basketball and ended the season with a 65-17 record. They lost 2 of their last 3 games, but right before that, they went on another big winning streak. Going into the playoffs, it was questionable what the Rockets were going to be able to do, as James Harden and Chris Paul were known for not having the best playoff resumes in their careers. But the Rockets would enter the playoffs with confidence. Out of 15 teams in the conference, the Houston Rockets had the best record and held the number 1 seed. So they would be going against the 8th seed Minnesota Timberwolves, who had Karl-Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins. This was going to be a tough one for Houston. Game 1 for Houston was a great beginning for them. James Harden led the way with 44 points. In the first quarter, it seemed like he was generating almost all of their baskets. Clint Capella also was playing great defense, and so was PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker getting a few blocks, and Clint Capella being able to block Karl-Anthony Towns at the beginning. As you can see, Clint Capella is also good on the offensive end, catching lobs. The Rockets were playing really well in this first game, and they continued it throughout. James Harden might have had 44 points, but that wasn't the whole story. It wasn't like he was just hogging the ball. He was passing it a lot. Everyone on the Rockets did a really good job in being able to take the first game. And James Harden didn't even take his first shot until about 4 minutes into a game, which was a three-pointer that he knocked down. As you can see here, Clint Capella blocks Karl-Anthony Towns. Great for the Rockets, and the Rockets were able to secure this W in Game 1 in Houston. That the Rockets won by only 3 points. So it's clear it's going to be a little tough, but they went into Game 2 with confidence. The Rockets clearly carried their momentum into Game 2 because they blew out the Timberwolves by 20 points at home. Chris Paul led the way for the Houston Rockets with 27 points, and the Rockets will win this game 102-82 and go into Minnesota with confidence. Game 3 in Minnesota did not really go for Rockets' way. They were struggling on defense. They weren't playing too bad. They were knocking down threes here and there, and they were, testing the Minnesota Timberwolves. But the Timberwolves' home energy helped them a lot. They were attacking a lot inside. Chris Paul and James Harden didn't have really bad games, as James Harden was the leading scorer for the Rockets in this game with 29 points. In transition, the Rockets fell apart and struggled to guard the 3-point line, as you see Wiggins just hits an easy free right there. And then again in transition, they just find Jimmy Butler for an open free, and they don't even care to transition to him, and he knocks it down. As you can see, the Timberwolves just kept attacking and attacking and kept hitting threes over and over again, and the Rockets were struggling to guard this. James Harden wasn't that bad. As you can see, he hits this nice isolation sidestep three, but it wouldn't be enough to help the Rockets. And the Rockets would still be up 2-1 in the series, losing in Minnesota 121 to 105 as the final score. Games 4 and 5 would go their way back in Minnesota and in Houston, and the Rockets would win the series in 5 games. James Harden did an excellent job leading the Rockets and didn't have much of a playoff meltdown in this first series, so Rockets fans would hope that he could carry this momentum into the next series. After wrapping it up in 5, the Rockets were ready to hopefully face the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals and try to compete for a title. I mean, they were already one of the best road teams in the league at 31-10 on the season. 31-10 on the road is really good, so it could really help in the playoffs with the rowdy crowds that teams usually have. So the Rockets would go into the second round with confidence after gentlemen sweeping the Minnesota Timberwolves. In the second round, they would be playing the Utah Jazz, who held the 5th seed in the Western Conference going into the game. With a young Donovan Mitchell, and they had Rudy Gobert, who was a great defensive center who would hopefully challenge Clint Capella at the rim. The Rockets' defense was questionable in this game, as they gave up way too many open looks, like that right there. And on the offensive end, the Rockets weren't that bad, as Chris Paul and James Harden were doing their usual, and Chris Paul was really good at playmaking this time. At the end of the first quarter, you can see they have the lead, and here, Donovan Mitchell just passes to Joe Ingles, who just does an easy layup. Clint Capella wasn't playing the best inside defense, and neither were the Rockets themselves, which was really, really frustrating, as Clint Capella dunks over Rudy Gobert. If Clint Capella could get more looks like that, it would have been an easier close for the Rockets, but it wasn't that easy. They hold a big lead because of their offense, and the Jazz were just struggling to make shots that were wide open. And the Rockets were just allowing too many wide open shots, and they got away with a win here as the Jazz kept missing, as James Harden continued his isolation moves. And the Rockets would take game 1. The Houston Rockets would wrap it up in 5 games, and they were going to head to the Western Conference Finals against none other than the Golden State Warriors, the exact matchup they wanted. They knew it was going to be really tough, and so did Mike D'Antoni. So they hoped this system of basketball would help them in the conference finals to see who would advance to the NBA Finals. Game 1 was a suspenseful beginning for the Rockets. James Harden was left wide open for free for the first basket of the game. And the Warriors kept letting James Harden do whatever he wanted to do just so he can get tired. As you can see, Clint Capella is playing great defense here on Kevin Durant and got the block. James Harden led the way for the Rockets, scoring 41 points in Game 1. The Rockets had such a dominant first quarter. Even though the dominant first quarter wasn't over yet, because Steph Curry was so good at anchoring the Rockets' defense and getting himself baskets. They kept fighting, but James Harden isolations was unstoppable, as you see he gets another step back on that one. This proved the Rockets could actually challenge the Warriors and possibly end this final streak. Here, Steph Curry just walks around, steps it back, gets right past the defense, kicks it out to Klay Thompson, and knocks down the free, which is what the Rockets struggled with in the Timberwolves series and the Jazz series. They struggled guarding the 3-point shot. Chris Paul had a pretty good game. He had 23 points with 11 rebounds and 3 assists. Clint Capella's game wasn't bad either. 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. Eric Gordon had 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And Trevor Ariza had 8 points and 2 rebounds. These Rockets players didn't play that bad, but the thing that really led them down was PJ Tucker's only 1 point. He did have 5 rebounds and 2 assists, but it clearly wasn't enough for this Rockets team to win this game against Golden State. PJ Tucker would need to do more. And James Harden shouldn't be having to put up 41 points just for that. But overall, it was a pretty nice performance from the Rockets. The Warriors played better, though, as they let James Harden do his thing, and James Harden got tired out, which gave the Warriors Game 1 so they could take a commanding 1-0 series lead in Houston. And they would come back for Game 2 in Houston with confidence, but Houston wanted to win. Game 2 was much different from Game 1. The Rockets battled the whole entire way. They let the Warriors to some easy shots at the beginning, but they started picking up the pace. James Harden had 27 points and was able to grab 10 rebounds and 3 assists. So something that was really helping the Rockets was their point guards and shooting guards grabbing a lot of rebounds to take a little pressure off Clint Capella. And Clint Capella wasn't bad on the glass either, grabbing 10 rebounds along with 5 points. The Rockets really dominated this game, and as you can see here, James Harden's isolation showed to be unguardable as he gets right past his defender and lays it in. The Warriors were struggling to defend the Rockets' drives in this game, although Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson weren't even that bad. Steph Curry did have only 16 points, but it came with 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Klay Thompson, who only had 8 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. Now, I say they didn't do really that bad because Kevin Durant had 38 points with no assists, but he did have 3 rebounds. Draymond Green had 6 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. And the Rockets completely destroyed the Warriors in this game. The final score was 105-127. And Chris Paul really benefited to this, having 16 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. And Eric Gordon was the main show with 27 points, and the Rockets simply just outplayed the Warriors to tie this series at 1 game apiece. Now they would go to Oracle Arena, and the Rockets were confident. The Rockets got blown out in Game 3. The final score was 126-85. The Rockets underperformed. Trevor Ariza only had 6 points. PJ Tucker only had 6 points. Clint Capella did have 13 points with 8 rebounds. Chris Paul had 13 points, but he also grabbed 10 rebounds and he had 4 assists. Eric Gordon had 11, and James Harden really underperformed, 20 points, but he did dish out 9 assists and he did have 5 rebounds. The Warriors simply dominated in this game. Steph Curry had 35 points to lead the Warriors. Kevin Durant had 25, and Klay Thompson only had 13. While Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green both had 10. The Rockets simply just got destroyed, and this showed that it would be scary if any of the Rockets players underperformed. Eric Gordon had a pretty decent night, and PJ Tucker's night wasn't that bad. Same with Clint Capella. And Chris Paul, he had a pretty good night. It was a pretty normal night for Chris Paul. He just didn't dish out as many assists, but James Harden was really off. So if 1 or 2 players were off, it seemed like it was over for the Rockets, and they would go into Game 4 wanting to get another W. Rockets won Game 4, 95-92. James Harden had 30 points, and Chris Paul had 27. So now it was time for Game 5 back in Houston. Game 5 was probably the most intense game of the series at this point. James Harden and the Rockets started out dominating. As you can see, they scored the first basket there of a James Harden drive. And then they score another one here of James Harden again, but Clint Capella tips it in. The Rockets started out scoring well, and the only few points they allowed at the start were Warriors fast breaks, and they just keep feeding Clint Capella inside, and they're just attacking the paint. As you can see here, the first basket for the Warriors is a Kevin Durant dunk. And this game would really come down to the wire. The Warriors didn't have bad performances by their stars. Kevin Durant, 29. Klay Thompson had 23, and Steph Curry had 22. And this game was intense, as Chris Paul would actually end up getting an injury in the fourth quarter, which wasn't so good for the Rockets. But in the end, the Rockets would come out with the victory, 98-94. Trevor Ariza had 6 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist, and came in clutch when they needed him. PJ Tucker also had 8 points, which was really good for him, and he was able to snag in 9 rebounds, which was really, really helpful because they needed the rebounds as James Harden and Chris Paul calmed down on the rebounds a little bit. But Clint Capella also got on that glass, 12 points and 14 rebounds. And surprisingly, James Harden struggled a little bit, 19 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. The Rockets still ended up getting the win by 4 points. But the reason the Rockets still won, Chris Paul, 20 points, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, led the Rockets in assists. But the biggest story of it all, Eric Gordon had another big game, dropping 24 points and leading it all the way for the Rockets. The Rockets completely destroyed the Warriors in the clutch, and James Harden and Chris Paul took a 3-2 series lead. And Houston was very, very confident going into the next game. As you can see here, they just simply dribble it and kick to Eric Gordon for free, which was a really good strategy that the Warriors were struggling to defend. While the Warriors were struggling to defend the Rockets' offense, the Rockets were also struggling to defend the Warriors' offense. It was really hard to defend. And that's how the Houston Rockets won this game. The Rockets lost Game 6 after leading in the game, and there would be a Game 7 in Houston. James Harden had 32 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds. So now it was going to be a crazy tough battle in Game 7. Game 7 was by far one of the craziest games of the series, once again. James Harden and the Rockets got Klay Thompson to 3 fouls at the start of the game. And James Harden continued his excellent play as he dribbles, gets down the lane, does a reverse layup. The Rockets were really taking the lead in this game as James Harden gets inside again and lays it in. The Rockets just kept attacking, and Clint Capella kept getting wide open shots in the paint. James Harden this time dishes it to Capella, and Capella throws it down. The Rockets right now have an 11-point lead, would make that 14, and Steve Kerr was kind of looking nervous on the bench over there. James Harden gets a steal, and he throws it down, and it started to seem like the Rockets were really going to run away with that as the crowd goes crazy there. Hurt himself, and Chris Paul's enjoying it on the bench, thinking that if he played, they could have just won Game 6. Now, it's clear the Rockets clearly needed Chris Paul because they haven't won a game since he got injured. As James Harden continues doing amazing passing, and Clint Capella finishes there. And he's flexing his muscles. Clint Capella had 20 points in this game, along with 9 rebounds, and he played 37 minutes. This proves the Rockets were going to win this game, and they were determined. But then in the third quarter, some Golden State Warriors chaos came along, and the Warriors kept hitting and hitting and hitting. Illegal screen, and Curry hits the free. The Warriors just kept attacking the Rockets, and the Rockets just simply fell apart and could not defend it at all. Curry gets inside on this time, and then Curry gets to the free-throw line and just shoots it in after getting the screen. The Rockets really blew this game, and they missed 27 straight three-pointers, which became the meme at the end. The Houston Rockets were really, really, really close in this game, and they would lose the series 4-3. That right there sums up for you how the Rockets almost had the dream season and beat the dynasty Golden State Warriors, but just barely fell short. This was a really good Mike D'Antoni team, and they failed at winning a championship and wouldn't really get another shot. And that's all for today's video. Till next time.